Welcome to the HopCast.
Thanks for joining us once again, everybody.
I'm Chmielewski.
My name is Ken Hunnemeder.
And we're outside the Publican.
Yes, one of our favorite places to eat and drink beautiful, good-tasting things.
Right. And they're always doing interesting things with beer and food.
Yeah. So it's if you're not familiar, Publican is kind of one of the destination restaurants for beer and also having great cuisine. So in celebration of the CBC, they're going to be doing an event here in collaboration with Two Brothers. So it's basically a beer dinner, but it's a little bit different because they actually collaborated on one of the beers. Normally you just get, have the breweries come, bring the beer, and do pairings. But this time Michael from the Publican schlepped out there and helped them brew a sour mash beer. So it should be quite interesting.
Well, I'm getting hungry and
Yes.
thirsty even talking about it here.
Yeah, so let's go inside and see what's cooking.
Thanks for following us inside the Publican.
Yeah, we found our way inside, and we found the man that's going to show us around. Everyone, Michael McAvena, beer director over here at the Publican.
Right, thanks for joining us and spending some time with us.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about the event and the collaboration itself. You've got quite a relationship going on with Two Brothers, and it made it a little bit different than any other beer dinner, the fact that you actually went out there and helped with the brew.
Absolutely. We actually did a beer dinner with Two Brothers almost a year ago about this time. And they also own Windy City Distribution, which is a huge craft-only distribution company in Chicago. So I work with them 2 times a week, if you will. So the onus to do a dinner with them for the CBC was pretty obvious. And we've done a couple different collaborations where we had brewed with or made beer with brewers prior for beer dinners, but to do something for the CBC was sort of a big deal.
Right.
So we sat down with Jason and Wesley Phillips, who is sort of the face of Windy City at this point, and had a kind of extensive conversation about what kind of beer we were going to make maybe 2-3 months ago. We kind of landed on using the idea of sour mash as a procedure, and then also kind of incorporating the ideas behind a triple, but keeping it totally anti-BJCP and kind of outside of guidelines. And I actually don't think that ever made a sour mash before, so it was like, just go for it.
So essentially the process with that is you make your mash and then just leave it overnight. Is that what happened?
You make the mash, you get it up to the right temperature, and then you're letting it just do its own thing. But you're allowing the bacterium on the outside of the grain to produce lactic acid and do its thing. We restarted the mash about 23 hours later, and just you finish with your saccharification rest, and then you begin your lauter, your sparge, and your Vorloff, and all that stuff.
And you even do a bit of home brewing yourself.
Yeah.
Right,
As much as I can.
No stranger to it.
It wasn't just like you were going, hey, put some specialty in there.
Yeah, it's just delicious. Specialty is wonderful.
Explain a little bit, because it is a blend. Also going to be available just straight up.
Sure.
How did you go about that?
So, well, when we were discussing it, part of the idea was like, all right, we've never made a sour mash before. I've never personally, and Jason Ebel, the brewmaster, who's made tons of beer in his time, has never done one before. So, I believe we made about 50 barrels. The intention is their system's 50 barrels, but we probably made about 30.
Okay.
It's a lot of beer.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of allowed ourselves the space to make mistakes by saying we are going to sit down after the beer is fermented and it's in secondary and do a lot of tasting and potentially some blending.
Right.
So after tasting the beer in secondary and saying, let's sit down and do some blending, we've come up with 2 blends and 1 Straight Naturel, I guess.
Okay, yeah. And the blend was pretty interesting sitting down with you guys to do that, because Jason, I think he said it was like the second beer that he ever brewed at their current facility.
Yeah, it's their Edelweiss that had been fermented with exclusively Brettanomyces.
Right.
And not a wild strain, but an isolated strain that has only ever seen Brett. So no Acetobacter, no Lacto, no Pedio, these other things that produce other interesting esters and flavor compounds and acids. So it's just Brett, but it's very, very interesting.
We're straight up like funk.
Yeah, straight up funk with just a little bit of lactic acid. We ended up tasting a bunch of different blends because he kind of knew he wanted to use that beer in the end. So we tasted it at, a 60% sour mash and 40% his Brett beer, and then kind of fluctuating all around with where we're going to go. We ended up with a 70-30, I think.
Okay, that's right, yeah. And then the other one is using
bitter end.
Bitter end. So how do you think, just sour mash triple mixing with a pale ale? How did that go?
I don't even know if triple could be equated anymore, but it tasted like a more acidic Orval.
Okay.
I mean, Orval is essentially
Belgian pale.
It's a Belgian pale, but I mean, it was made during the time when the Brits were in Belgium, so they were using essentially kind of the same ideas behind a British-style pale ale, but it was allowed to get the natural terroir of the area, just meaning wild yeast. So that's where the secondary fermentation of Brettanomyces comes in. So the whole Orval thing makes a lot of sense to me.
How they feel about brewing this beer? It's like a one-off, so it's like we can do whatever we want. It's not like they have to make bitter end. Like, this is the same thing every time.
They're not owned by anyone. They're owned by two really cool brothers. So Jason, when we were sitting down, relayed to us the fact that, I don't report to committee. If I want to make a sour mash beer, I can. These are my guys. This is my company. This is my business. I don't have to.
So he can always have the fun if he wants to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If he wanted to make a tree beer of something, like whatever, he could do it. And that's the great thing, because he doesn't have to answer those people.
And with them also being lovers of food, how did you kind of come up with, or maybe you didn't, but the menu?
The menu, well, we've spent a lot of time with Windy City as a distribution company doing beer dinners. We do a beer dinner once a month. So it's always a big dialogue between myself, the brewer, our representative from the distribution company, and our sous chef or even our chef. So, beers are brought in, and it's just a huge round table discussion, maybe a month or two prior, about what's going to be available seasonally and what they're excited to do. So for this dinner, we sat down with Jason, which was great, because he has a lot of ideas about his beer, because obviously he sees them on an everyday basis. And so he came and sat down with us about 2 weeks ago, and we had a lot of ideas of what we would do, but sat down, tasted all the beers, we tasted little elements of dishes, and kind of put the whole menu together.
All right, so we talked beer, and we need to talk some food.
Yeah, well, let's eat something. So, sitting down with Paul Kahan. Thanks so much for joining us, Paul.
Not a problem.
When you're sitting down and trying to get through a menu based around beers, what's your thought process? How do you tackle that first?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's important to realize that we do everything here with our team. Mike McAvena, who you guys interviewed, the beer boy, as I call him, only because he's boyish in appearance, not because of his skills or because of... And I think he's one of the greatest beer minds in this country. I know he is. Brian Houston, the chef de cuisine here in Erling, Wubauer, who's our sous chef here, we all sit down and we extract flavors and we talk about things, and we often run to the kitchen and pull out some candied kumquats or some of this or some of that, and a lot of it is trial and error. For me, we just tasted with the crew over at Blackbird with Mike Sheeran and Dave Posey and Patrick Fahey, the pastry chef, and they are really cerebral cooks. I'm more of I cook with my heart, and not that they don't cook with their heart, but they think about everything, and they really approach it from an analysis of flavors. For me, things just pop in my head, honestly, but here we really do it. We try to do it in a real organic way, and definitely when you taste a beer, you think of things right away, if you're not super exhausted, as I am right now.
Right.
But regardless, so that's where we start, and we taste a beer. The beer's in what we think is going to be a logical progression. Sometimes we stick with that, sometimes we don't. And then a few days later, we hopefully we actually taste some of the dishes or a little closer and see if they work and tweak things from there.
So fairly, like, by tasting a beer, you kind of instantly get a feeling of something that you might want to do. And
yeah, I mean, the way my mind works is, I think I taste a beer and I think, okay, it's got this much body, so that either means, vegetables, fish, seafood, poultry, game, super fat, super fat being pork belly, all that is sort of.
You don't serve that here, do you?
We do not. But so that's the first thing that my mind thinks about, and then from there, I sort of think what flavors it screams. Barley, asparagus, onions, wild leeks, and we don't go the contrasting flavor route. I don't think we try to do things that taste exactly like the beer. It's just sort of an organic conceptualization of what we think is going to taste awesome with the beer. And like for example, with the long haul session ale, lamb makes a ton of sense. The lamb that we get is incredibly aged and complex in flavor. It's from Crawford Farm in Madison, Wisconsin. I think it's probably the best lamb on earth, and I'll stand behind that. It's very uniquely aged in a cave, and it just has amazing depth of flavor and kind of matches the hoppy and malty balance in the beer, and it just makes perfect sense. And then beyond that, the auxiliary flavors, we think, we just blurt things out, and Michael says, I can see that, or I can't see that. And it's really a collaborative effort. So there's nothing at all scientific about our approach. I don't know, some people are born with the ability to say tomatoes go with basil. Other people have absolutely no clue. They couldn't care that tomatoes go with basil. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of a way of connecting the dots. Some things grow together. I mean, we certainly, every menu that we do, we look at what's available seasonally. We say, okay, we know we want to do lamb with this. The flavor profile makes sense. What's around? What's coming out of the ground right now? And we try to build the dish based on that.
Was there anything unique in the collaboration beer that you thought ahead of time, like you were thinking about the food before the beer, or was it just see what happens?
I think Michael came up with an idea of a style that he wanted to implement, a unique style, and then from that, and I know the guys wanted to age it in their big oak tanks, fooders. I want to swim in one of those in beer with Ellie Mae.
Drink your way out.
What is it? What was it? The Petticoat Junction where they swim in the water tank?
I think so.
It reminds me of Strange Brew.
Strange Brew, yeah.
Yeah. Were we thinking of any food? Absolutely not.
Okay.
We just, again, trying to make great beer.
I
don't think the greatest brewers sit down and say, I'm thinking of a T-bone steak when I'm brewing this beer. It's just kind of you think of a technique and a style that's going to produce something that's unique, and you try it out. That's what we did. We tried it out.
Trial and error. That's tough.
Trial and error.
When it comes to food and beer. How are you in general as a beer drinker? What kind of stuff do you tend towards and that kind of thing?
You know what? Honestly, I love all beer.
Good answer.
I like when I go to a place that's supposed to have a good beer list and they don't, I'll drink a PBR. If there's not something there that's really intriguing to me, I like great beer. But again, if I go somewhere and it's like, boy, nothing to drink, PBR tastes just fine to me. On the other hand, I was at Spite and Dival in Brooklyn last week, and they have an amazing beer list, and I just wanted to drink everything in sight and tried a ton of stuff that I hadn't had before. And and the opportunity here is I just will ask the beer boy what he's got on tap that I'm going to really love. And you know what, I at the end of a long night, I tend to go with some of the regulars. The Hopsinger that we've had on tap is delicious at the end of a night. I like the English beers when we have them on tap. The Conixton, help me out. Bluebird Bitter. I love almost every beer. So, and I'm incredibly excited for the upcoming week.
Yeah, the Monday dinner with Two Brothers sounds awesome. All the beer and food. I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah,
try it out. And
the parties we're having late night, I'm scared how many people are going to come here.
Buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be a great event. Obviously, great collaboration and an interesting one too. The fact that you guys collaborated on the beer, it should be amazing. So thanks so much for joining us. We can't wait to try it all.
My pleasure.
Ken, I don't think I can eat any more.
Well, then I will have yours.
Wait, no, I might be maybe a little bit.
But the important thing is that this beer dinner was quite something. It was very, very exceptional.
Right. So kudos to the Publican and Two Brothers. Awesome night.
The food and the beer pairings were spot on. Some of the best that I've ever come across.
Right. Their collaboration beer was great.
It was dynamite. The sour mash, it was unique to the styles that you normally come across, and especially with that barbecued salmon, just worked very, very well together.
And since we're so familiar with all the other Two Brothers family, it was just nice to have something else, I think, too, from them. So.
Absolutely. To see the new stuff that they're coming out with, and also to try the long haul session ale was great, especially with the wonderful pairing. So thanks so much to the Publican and for Two Brothers for having us here tonight.
Right. If you don't know about them, find out about them. Yeah. Both of them are great. Get Two Brothers beer, eat the Publican food, and it's just great.
So thanks again. Wonderful event to kick off the CBC. Stay tuned.